I found a Dexter comic book. I had no idea that this existed. It's a 5-issue miniseries, and I just had to read it. Now let me tell you what the story is and my thoughts on it. So issue number 1 opens with Dexter killing what seems to be a child predator. Side note, in this story, there's like a shadowy figure following him, which I think might be the personification of the Dark Passenger, which I liked it. Now, I haven't read the books yet, but I have watched all of the TV shows, and so I like this portrayal. He gets invited to his high school reunion with Rita. Hey, she's in here. We love it. And she wants to go because she might learn more about Dexter. And he sees this guy. His name is Steve Gonzalez, and the dark shadows wrap around him. And I think basically Dexter's going to kill this guy, right? Probably. I think it's the Dark Passenger saying this is a bad guy. So we find out Steve was actually Dexter's high school bully, and who Dexter for sure wanted to kill when he was younger, but literally said he didn't want to do it because it would affect his academic standing. Bro is hilarious, honestly. We eventually find out Dexter scared him to stop bullying him by wrapping him up on the table like Dexter does and threatening him with a knife. And Rita wants to meet Steven because he's like the number 3 of the 10 sexiest men in Miami, and he's the founder of the Hope Foundation. Reluctantly, Dexter introduces Rita to him, and Steve is actually like super nice, but also maybe like throwing him a little bit of shade, like calling him a true monster, but he's said Dexter set him straight. In the morning, Dexter puts on his mask, metaphorically speaking, and goes back to his job of being a blood spatter analysis. And the first victim is a homeless guy who was known for hanging around the Hope Foundation. And Dexter's like, yeah, I think our guy killed him. Now I get to kill him. I get to kill my high school bully because he fits the code now. Very good. I'm a happy little boy. Harry would be proud. Issue number 2, Deb and Dexter visit Steve, and Deb interrogates the hell out of Steve, but it doesn't really seem to go anywhere. And then after Deb and Dexter talk, then they both think something's wrong, so they're gonna figure it out. And they do some digging, and the guard, I believe his name is Devox, turned out to be some paramilitary group known for murdering and kidnapping and people, but it's all good because he went on through the Hope Project, as Steve says. Steve says he changed and he's moved on, which is seeming like a theme here. Dexter is still convinced that Steve is the bad guy, not Devox, because the Dark Passenger says this is the real threat. While Dex and Deb are driving, well, only Deb is driving because they both don't have the hand on the wheel drive. Anyways, a guy throws a Molotov cocktail right at their car, and they assume it's DeVoe because, his paramilitary background. And that is the end of issue 2. By the way, if you love reading comics, you should join Comics on the House, my free comic newsletter. I deliver free comics to your inbox as often as my illustrators and I can make them. Just visit comicsonthehouse.com to sign up or click the link in the description. Now we're on to issue number 3. Deb and Dexter confront Steve, but he refuses to believe is DeVoe, and he rants about people changing, though Dexter really believes people can't change because if he could, then he wouldn't be a killer. He says this in his head, not out loud, obviously. Deb starts doing her investigating stuff, searching for DeVoe, but Dexter decides to do it his own way by sneaking into Steve's building. And he eventually, after going into the sex dungeon, he finds a safe with socials, bank certificates, and documents calling Steven the power of attorney for all the homeless people that he brings to the Hope Foundation. But we don't necessarily find out why he's doing this. He's a bad guy, probably. Dex starts snapping pictures of all the documents, and then his Dark Passenger alerts him that something's off. There's a camera in the picture frame, and Steve knows it because he got an alert on his phone. And as soon as Dexter gets home, ready to relax and sit on his computer, he gets a call from Deb. DeVoe is dead. Issue number 4, Steve identifies the body of DeVoe, but he thinks it's suicide. But Deb isn't buying that shit. That's because she thinks he's hiding something, and it's up to them to solve it. And by them, she means Dexter. Dexter finds out there was a needle mark on DeVoe. He believes DeVoe was killed by a potassium overdose. Basically, what happens with a potassium overdose, you get like woozy and you start to lose your motor controls, but it's impossible to prove because it gets absorbed into your skin. And so he thinks he got on the bike and crashed. And that cracks the case. Basically, he hires homeless persons and says he pays them a lot of money, but then basically keeps all that money. And he tells her to look into Arthur Bleak, who was the homeless guy that was killed. It turns out he was actually a federal agent, and the FBI is now taking over the case, which means they're probably not going to get anywhere, which means it was time to play by another rule, something a little bit less formal. That's right, Dexter removes his mask, letting the dark passenger take over, and heads to Steve's house. But as soon as he's close to the compound, he's stuck with a needle, probably full of potassium. And finally, issue 5, Dexter wakes up, or is woken up by water, and he's on the billionaire island, and then they put him to work doing like slave labor. Okay, crazy. He worked for what seemed like months at a time, and the whole time he was hoping Deb would come save him, and she did come, just not the way he hoped. She was roped up, gagged and tied, and thrown on the ground. Then it was time to talk, in a psychotic way, of course. They were tied up on like a giant letter X. And as Steve starts to taunt Dex, Deb actually lets him know that there's a tracker in her shoe. Steve obviously thinks it's a lie to get him to stop harming her brother, but then the alarms start blaring. Dexter breaks free of his giant X, and of course not without killing people and then letting Deb free. Obviously had to do it the other way. And he chases Steve down the dock. He actually has a gun in his hand, ready to shoot. Deb takes it, she's about to take it, and then the FBI say drop the weapon. Steve escapes and goes anywhere, probably back to his homeland. He was a transfer student in the beginning. I forgot to mention that. I'm not racist. Okay, and then they feel like they'll never find him, but of course Dexter does. So I really actually enjoyed this series. It was a lot of fun, and it's always great to pop into the world of Dexter. The writing was great. Like, the writer really knew Dex and Deb and the characters, and I think that's because it was written by Jeff Lindsay, the creator of Dexter. I have to give a shout out to Michael C. Hall, by the way, and the actor who plays Deb, because their voices were just blaring in my head every time I read a line of one of those characters. I thought the book was a solid 8 out of 10. I think it would have been higher because they called the series Down Under without being in Australia. That's all I'm saying. It's really hard to find, so if you find it, good luck. Other than that, see you later. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.